Thank you, Jamie, for the introduction, and welcome to our session in my name and also in the name of Pascal. Pascal is the CIA from SocGen, a very experienced auditor and banker, and he will, now together with me, moderate this session, and he will be the link to the panel. And we'll also take part as a panelist. We are, I think, curious enough to join the discussion and also give us your and our view on the topics we're going to discuss in this session. We have two focus topics for this panel. One is the feedback from the OSI reviews and information about the reorganization of the ECB. And the second one is the collaboration between the on-site inspection and the internal auditors. Well, who else could be in a better position to discuss with us than two members of the ECB from the who are very experienced, and I'm very delighted to introduce two heads of divisions, Jerome and Pietro. Jerome, he leads the financial risk inspections team within the Directorate General on-site and internal model inspections, and he also coordinates with the national teams, competent authority teams. He's very experienced. He joined the ECB in 2014 to set up the SFM, and he started his career at the Bank of France. Pietro is currently the head of the non-financial inspections division and also in the Directorate General on-site and internal model inspections. And he joined the ECB in June 2019. Before that, he was also working for the ECB. He spent a large part of his career at Banca d'Italia and in the banking and financial supervision department. So very warm welcome to the session. I'm sure there are quite a number of questions from the audience, and I'm also sure that we will have some time later on to take up your questions and discuss them. Let's start, I would say, with a short statement from each panelist about the internal audit function in the crisis. So in a few sentences, what is your view, in your view, the key challenge today for internal auditors in Europe to add value to their organization? What's your view? Maybe we start with you, Jerome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Andrea, for the question. So, as you said, I've been involved in the on-site business, so to say, for quite a while, and I would start by quoting Warren Buffett. Everybody knows the quote when he said, "Only when the tide goes out, you discover who's been swimming naked." So I think the role of internal audit, and probably to a large extent what we are trying to do also in the SSM, is to make sure that even when the tide is high, you see who's been swimming naked. So I think my expectations for internal audit would be, in particular in those times of crisis, to insist more on, I would say, independence and intrusiveness, which for me are probably the two key elements to a good internal audit function. Thank you.
Thank you. Pietro, do you like to give us
your
thoughts?
Yes, I would like to. Okay, fully share what Jerome said. I would like also add some more concrete ideas. I think we also think that it's important that internal audits will focus on the operational resilience and also on the sustainability of business model vis-a-vis emerging risks. Regarding the operational resilience, I think that it's crucial to leverage on the lesson learned from the pandemic in order also to improve the ability to identify and manage and external and internal threats. In this case, I would like also to highlight 2 points in a sense. you have also to focus on the interconnectedness among also the external providers, because your banks are going more and more outsourcing the IT, but also cloud computing. It's crucial also to check the emerging risk connected to that, and also how the current system are able to support the innovation. And from the business model, just the digitalization that for us is not only an IT issue, it's more comprehensive, and also the emerging risk linked to the transition to the green economy. Many thanks.
Well, thank you. You know, I might pursue, since we are now in a very specific situation, a crisis situation. I think for us, the challenge is even keep the ball rolling and to fulfill our audit plan to the extent possible, and also make sure that whatever has been done in the crisis situation by the business, that we stay close and take a look at things like revised credit processes and loan processes, for example. Or if you think about trading from home, that's a new situation, and we as an audit function, I think we should stay close to these new processes and process changes. And looking at the bank, I think it's also important to get our view on what should be doing, what should be done during the crisis, but also later on, where are emerging risks, as you one said, Pedro. I think that's also important. What are the changes to the risk profile during the crisis and later on? And I think that goes also hand in hand with a close interaction with the supervisors. So, for example, in our organization, we established a regular call with the JST team on a monthly basis, and I'm very happy to discuss anything we are doing with them very closely. And I appreciate, in particular in this crisis situation, their guidance and the openness and discussion. That's kind.
On my side, I will largely concur with Andrea. I think the first challenge for us, and that's what we have been applying over the last months, is to stay on course, to deliver as much as we could on the audit plan, in close coordination with the GST, which valued our independent view on the risk and the emerging risk, and our views on the way the bank was tackling the situation. The other challenge which is linked to that is to stay very agile and very flexible in the way we adapt the course of our audit plan, in order to stick to the areas of risk that may emerge. And looking maybe a bit longer term, as Jean-Pierre Mustier was prompting us to do this morning, is to continue to keep ahead of the curve by investing further on the remote working capabilities and on data. And, we were lucky to have, say, invested a lot in previous years on data, having extractions directly from data lakes. That is a field we will further invest in order to meet the next phases of the crisis. Maybe at this stage we could turn to the audience for the first poll. To be a short poll. So please turn on to Slido, and you will have a list of 4 items, and I would like you to pick 3 roles for internal auditors in the crisis, based on your past experience. So I'm just looking at it. There are not many contributions so far, so I do hope you're not facing technical issues. Because so far the result seems to be stuck. It's moving now. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, 10 contributions out of 130. Still waiting some more. So let's allow maybe for a few more seconds for you all to contribute. I think we're there. There are not many additional contributions so far. Okay, I suggest we may freeze the picture just in a few seconds so that we have time to talk about the results. So there are obviously two leading answers, and the first one being to, as you can see, I guess, helping the board of our banks understand the changing risk profile of the bank. So it calls into the independent view, which is the one of the third line of defense, and also assist management by completing prompt advisory reviews of new risk or new processes. I think it echoes what we have been living. I'm a bit surprised personally by the fact that the last item, provide assistance to the supervisor, only accounts for 17%, because it's slightly different from the views Andrea and myself had as to the coordination between the supervisors and us. At the end of the day, I think it very much echoes. The good news is that so the continue as normal, the audit must go on, is the one before last ranking. Continue as normal effectively can't be the right term, but staying the course, I think, would have been a one. I think that's my personal views. I may turn now maybe to Jérôme. Jérôme, if you want to comment the results.
Well, I think all those proposals are fully making sense, but since we are asking for a ranking, I'm not surprised by what we see on the screen. Coming back on your remark on the assistance to the supervisor, although I fully understand why it has been ranked the last, I would like to insist on the importance for us, in particular for on-site inspectors, to benefit when we are in one mission, to benefit from the support of the internal audit function. And I would say it's even more necessary in those difficult times that we are now facing, with the need to work almost 100% remotely. I think the need for having within the bank people who are more or less on the same page with usually the same background and hopefully the same goals is extremely important to us. So of course, it might not be the message that you would officially convey, but please be aware of the importance of your support for our activities.
Sure. Pietro?
Yes, I don't have the slide on the screen, but okay, I can also provide my qualitative assessment. I fully agree with this, the first two, in a sense that in order to strengthen the independence that Jérôme said, the internal audit should have the need to be or must advise the senior management about the new risk and how to cope with them, for sure. For me, it's a big question mark. The third point that and now we are in a crisis. The important thing is more or less survive. Sorry, I don't see the slide, but this is what I'm just I remember about the results, and it would be interesting because it depends on could be the root cause could be different. Maybe there are few people in the internal audit department or in the bank, or maybe we are dealing with small banks. But the idea should be also that, okay, we are in a very bad situation, but internal audit function cannot forget that they are independent and they have they are the third line of defense.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Thank you, Pedro. Andrea?
Well, you know, one thing which was not rated very high, but which is also very close to my heart, and I know it's not shared by everybody, is seconding resources to the business and helping the business to fulfill their tasks. I have done that for a little while in a very secure environment, because independence is our highest value, and we all at all times need to make sure that we stay independent. But at the same time, I thought that in such a crisis modus, it's also important to allocate the resources to the areas where they are needed most. And I felt at the beginning of the crisis, when we had all the loan applications on the desks of Commerzbank, it's justified to ask our people who are knowledgeable and have the skills to support the business. That's something I have also discussed with my JST, and I was very pleased that they, you know, supported this idea. Yeah, that's what, in addition to what I've just said before.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. We did the same. So it's always a strong focus on independence, making sure that we are not compromising our stance for the future. But we definitely needed to display some solidarity. Before we move on, maybe as we have the privilege to have Jérôme around, Jérôme, would you like to comment a bit about the recent structural changes in the organization of the ECB and the supervisory function that may be helpful to all of us?
Yeah, thank you, Pascal. I don't know to what extent you've been made aware of the reorganization that took place on the 1st of October this year in the SSM functions of the ECB. And in particular, you probably remember that the on-site function was before part of what we call DG-MS4, which was the DG in charge of more or less all the horizontal or support functions. This on-site function has been upgraded, so to say, to an independent general directorate. So the name of the directorate is OMI, On-Site Mission and Internal Model Investigations. And this was a very clear signal by the supervisory board of the focus that the SSM intends to put even more on the on-site function. So this new general directorate is composed of 4 divisions. One division, 2 divisions for the on-site inspections. So one dedicated to financial risks and one to non-financial risks. The 3rd division will be in charge of internal models, and a 4th division is in charge of planning, methodology, more or less the supporting functions to the on-site inspections and the internal model investigations. So I am now in charge of the financial risk division, while Pietro is in charge of the non-financial risk division. But I think it's a very good signal, at least for those like us who've been working to promote this on-site function. You probably remember that when the SSM was set up in 2014, some countries like Germany, France, Italy did have a very long-standing history of on-site inspection, but it was not always the case. And I think that what we did, of course, with the support of the industry, because without the positive feedback from the industry, I don't think the supervisory board would have taken this decision. But it shows that we managed to convince, in particular, the countries that were new to this technique of the importance of a very strong and independent on-site function. And I think this is probably one of the specificities of the European system in terms of supervision, because looking at what's going on even in very large countries like UK or the US, I think we are a bit specific because of this importance that we put on on-site inspections.
Well, thank you, Jerome, for sharing with us the ideas behind and the thoughts of the ECB for the new organizational setup. And you stressed the importance of the interaction and the role between audit and the inspection teams. So it would be also great if you could share with us what you as on-site inspection teams have found when you looked at the banks over the last year. And in particular, of course, we are interested in what you found when you looked at the audit functions.
Yeah, since now this is part of Pietro's responsibility, I will then hand it over to him for this point.
Thank you, Pietro.
Thank you, Jerome, Andreas. Okay, it's I don't know. I can see the slide. Okay, but okay, just to remember, we have performed the usual analysis that we do every year on the findings of the previous year. So we have finalized the in-depth analysis for the key findings from 2019 OSIS. You know, also, I think that you are familiar with our scale, 4-point scale, and also the fact that we have concentrated a little bit to the most severe findings, so the F3 and the F4. We also found that 817 findings were classified, fall under this category. And also, if we can explain a little bit the root cause, the 27% of these findings are related to credit risk, while the 29% to the governance included internal audit. The governance, sometimes it's a little bit harder to disentangle credit risk from the governance, but we will try also to do this. But we also found some weaknesses in the governance related also to the credit risk. And also, I do not forget the 15% of the IT risk that I think it's important to analyze in the future, and the expect also in the future would be some areas, the IT risk, that we will cover also more. Relating to the key findings for the internal audit function, there is a clear concentration on two broad categories. One is the internal audit life cycle, and the other one is the scope of the activity. Concerning the internal audit life cycle, you can see that the three main weaknesses or area of improvement we have seen are the weak risk assessment process that undermine also the audit plan. And I would like just to provide you some example. In this case, for example, we noted the lack of a complete and documented analysis of the entity audit of universe, or as a second point, also insufficient coverage of the topic related to also to IRBA procedures and cash flow tools. And the third is also business and IT continuity, that are two risks that are not adequately reflected in the IT internal audit plan. Moving on the second point, ineffective follow-up of recommendation, just to give you some other example, we saw also the delay in complying with the internal audit recommendation on technological and data quality shortcomings. Data quality is a never-ending story that we encounter every time. Another example is also an inadequate and insufficient follow-up of the IT audit findings. And a third example is that there are no series of internal audit recommendations that are still unresolved and are mainly also related to IT shortcomings. The third example, so the third area, insufficient audit methodology, is that you have seen in some cases also an absence of a complete internal audit procedure manual. Moving on to the inadequate audit coverage, I would like to say that one of the most important thing that we have seen is that is linked to real estate evaluation and also the collateral management. And also there are other findings that are related also to the fact that the internal audit function did not capture the weaknesses regarding the management of the credit risk portfolio. But I stopped here because Jerome maybe can complement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pietro. It provides very useful food for thought.
Absolutely. So I think we are now all going back at an audit function and see how good we are doing in these areas.
Yes.
Where you think we are not good at. So it's a kind of benchmarking for us. Well, thank you for sharing the results. I think it's, as I said, very good to do a little benchmark for ourselves here. Well, you know, the next question would then be, which areas do you think we should spend more time in? And partly you have answered that by showing to us the results. And we would also like to have the opinion of the audience, and then later on we see whether you agree with what the audience says regarding what are the areas of importance.
So again, please turn to Slido, and you've got a long list of risk to pick in. So I would like you to identify the 5 risks that are increasing most significantly in your views in your bank. So the floor is yours now. Please contribute. The rhythm of answers is picking up very slowly, so please share your views with us so that we have, say, a more in-depth discussion afterwards. Because the bar is not moving a lot, and we only see 22 answers so far. So it's slowly moving. Okay, I guess we may be freezing the picture relatively soon. My personal reaction would be that without any surprise, we see IT risk and credit risk being ahead of the curve. My own comment would be that, say, beyond credit risk, which is picking up now that we are getting in a new phase of the cycle, everything that has to do with operational risk is very relevant in those days, and as usual, so we are covering all types of risks. So there's no surprise that the answers are widely spread. And the good news is that we also see emerging types of risk, irrespective of the pandemic, such as the sustainability risk. So maybe I will turn to Jérôme, maybe to kickstart the discussion on that.
Well, on the credit risk, which is part of my remit, I mean, no surprise, and you heard it this morning already, I guess, in Kirsten's speech. I mean, credit risk will be one of the main focuses for the supervisors in the coming month. And when it comes to on-site inspections, it means that we will probably even increase the number of missions dealing with this type of risk. You're probably aware, at least for the banks who already had such mission, that since more or less May or June, we moved into 100% off-site mode for inspections. So we came up with this concept of off-site inspections, where the team interacts with the bank in a full remote manner, which is of course a challenge, like for internal auditors, I imagine. And at the beginning, we were hoping that we would only have to live with this 100% remote approach for a few months, and that after the summer break, we would be in a position to resume the normal on-site inspections with the physical presence in the premises of the banks. Unfortunately, it's not the case, and I'm afraid we'll have to live with this off-sea technique for probably 6 to 9 months. So what we anticipate is until the middle of next year, we will stay with this operational mode. And since we still need to work in particular on credit risk, we decided to also carry out what we call credit file reviews in this remote mode. So when we started the first credit risk off-site inspections, we were only dealing with processes without reviewing individual files. But unfortunately, fortunately, we have more and more demand from the GST coordinators for quantitative outcomes. So assessing some portfolios, which will lead us to more credit file reviews type of missions. So of course, this is even more challenging when working remotely. So that's why I'm coming back to the point I made previously. I think that in this type of exercise, we would very much need the support of the internal audit function to carry out these missions.
Thank you. I'm just reactivating my mic, sorry. As you rightly pointed out, say on both sides, we have to live now with remote auditing. Again, I may turn to the audience again to ask you on the floor, what are the 3 key challenges that you auditors are facing currently in terms of remote auditing, very concretely. So again, let's turn to Slido. And let's make it as quick as possible so that we have more time to answer than we have time to have the answers appearing on the screen. There are only 9 answers, so if we could just move swiftly on Slido so that we get a proper feedback from you.
Yeah, but there seems to be a clear winner.
Yes, I think it very much echoes, I guess, what we are all living, which is the dual challenge to have to invest heavily in our, say, data, digitalization of our processes, and way beyond the third level of defense, that our banks move on to a more digitalized approach to processes, data, and so on. And at the same time, we do need, as a third line of defense, to have a physical interaction with the auditees, because it's part also of the judgment we make. So it definitely echoes, I think, what we are living. Andrea?
I think we, yeah.
Sorry,
if I may, based on the first feedbacks we are getting from those offices that, as I said, kicked off just for the earliest in June, I think. We of course have exactly the same analysis, but I would say compared, if I compare my expectations before with what we are now getting out of those missions, I'm quite pleased, because of course it's much more challenging for the teams. Of course, we do not meet all I would say expectations, but I must say we are getting a lot out of those missions. Of course, it doesn't mean that we will get rid of the on-site inspections, the physical ones, to move to something completely remote and dematerialized. As I said, the reorganization of the SSM precisely focuses a lot more on, I would say, the on-site function. But I think that with the tools that we are having, such as what we are doing right now, also with the possibility to exchange files from one team to another, in some cases, and we very much welcome this, meaning the on-site inspection teams are also using laptops provided by the bank, by the institution. We know that it can be challenging for many technical, legal reasons and so on, but we observe that it's something that works very well because when it comes to using the bank's tools, interacting with the bank, also accessing the data, it's very useful to have this possibility. So all these small elements are currently being analyzed. We are also discussing with the NCAs with the view of, as I said, having to live for probably 9 months at least with this technique. And it proves to be relatively efficient, I would say. So this is relatively good news.
Pietro, is there any comment from your side regarding the results or remote working?
No, I fully share what Jérôme said, and also the fact that maybe after the storm, we have also to find and to draw some lesson learned, and also to be more, because we need also to be efficient. We have also to identify the things that we need to go on site for sure, and some other things that we can perform a little bit off site. But as I said, the idea is that we will continue with the OSI as we did before. We're just adapting to this environment that doesn't help us to go on site. That's it.
Yeah, I can maybe also add from my point of view, I'm happy actually to see the first point as being the most important one on there, because first of all, it shows that we're all human beings, and you know, it's after all a teamwork, and it's good that we do not miss machines, but human beings. So that's what I like. And the second thing is, I guess I can also speak for my organization. We're quite surprised how well that worked out to audits remotely. We were all a little bit nervous, I have to say, when the crisis started. I'm going to work from home from one day to another. In particular, we had a number of audits running in foreign locations. But now, after having had this stress testing, live stress test, I would call it, I feel much more confident that we can do remote audits, and I also think that will never go away. And even after the crisis, whenever this will be, in remote auditing will become an integral part, or will have become an integral part of our work. So. Okay.
As I'm mindful of time, Jérôme, maybe let's move on to the last item of discussion we'll have to have with you. So we touched on that early on. So how do you think we internal audit functions can strengthen the cooperation we have with the on-site inspection teams going forward? Are there tips you would share with us?
Well, I think that in most, if not all the cases, the interaction is very good. And what is, I think, extremely valued on our side is, in particular, when we are talking to internal auditors, we have interlocutors who have the same culture, the same background, and usually, hopefully, the same goals. So I think this is extremely helpful, and therefore having the internal audit function playing this kind of go-between when we are on site, I think is extremely helpful. I'm not coming back to the previous survey where we saw that the supervisor's support was ranked last in the list. So I fully understand that the internal audit is also something that is totally different from what we are doing when we are leading or having a mission in a bank. But when we are in this situation, benefiting from the support and the expertise of the on-site of the internal auditors is extremely useful. And I would say probably even more in those times where many people, if not everybody, is working remotely, because to know who will be available where and via which technique is something that we cannot invent. So we really need your support in order to guide us in the bank. Ultimately, I think it's a win-win situation, because the more we are supported, the more efficient the mission is, and the least time we spend in the bank, which is, I think, a goal for both sides.
Peter, is there any comment from your end, any recommendation or any?
No, Jerome has made a comprehensive speech on that. No, the only thing is that I would like just to stress again one concept that he highlights, that it's very important, the support also on site from the internal audit, but also after the inspection in closing findings. Yeah, I think it's very good, the interaction, not only during the inspection, but also after the inspection. Maybe it's more for the GST, not for us, but it's more general topic.
Okay, I'm afraid that we are running out of time, if I see that correctly. I think we could go on with a number of questions that we have not even asked the audience. I hope you know, when there should be questions coming up, you are happy to answer them also even afterwards. I know what I would ask you, but in the interest of time, I think looking at Pascal, I think we need to close.
I think it's time for closing remarks, yes, and I will hand over to you, Andrea. As I see our next colleagues lined up. So.
Okay, good. Well, you know, thank you for having this very open discussion, and I think we have discussed some very important points. We are all now in a very specific situation, and you know, I can only repeat what you said from the ECB, that we are also looking for good cooperation, and I think it's very important, in particular in these times, to stay very close together, because we are on site, you are off site, and helping each other, you providing some guidance to us, and you trusting us that we act also in your interest and in the interest of the bank. I think that's a very good message for us. And with this, I'd like to end the session, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Jerome and Pietro.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.